All right, perfect. Let's see. Hello, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Aura Vasquez, and I want to welcome you to another edition of Get to Know the Candidate. Today, I am so excited to have invited Alex Fisch, who is a representative from Culver City. And if you are in the Los Angeles area, you're probably very familiar with him and his work. And it's election season, and just this week we celebrated National Voter Registration Day. So if you're watching this, if you're not sure if you registered to vote, please do me a favor and go ahead and find out and register, re-register to vote, because we need you more than ever. So with no further ado, let me allow Alex Fisch to say hello to us and welcome to Get to Know the Candidate.
Hi, thanks for having me, Aura. I spilled seltzer all over my desk right as we went live, so we're off to a good start.
It always happens. Would you like to maybe grab a towel, because this is how we do it?
I got
or
it.
something.
I got
You're
it.
good. You got a handle.
Used to disasters. I'm a crisis manager at heart.
As I know very well, there is never a dull moment in being a candidate or being a public servant. So I want to start by asking you to share with us a little bit about who you are and your background and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Going all the way back, I'm originally from Ventura County and, near Camarillo, and went off to college at Berkeley and, really fell in love with actual city life because Ventura County is very slow. And,
Yeah.
and then met my wife there, and we both got into grad school at UCLA. I went to law school at UCLA, graduated, clerked for a judge for a year, and then was a partner at a corporate bankruptcy firm for a while. And then after had a couple kids and realized that that was not really the lifestyle I wanted to lead, and I had other interests. And went to work at the California Department of Justice as a deputy attorney general, working on environmental enforcement issues. And even though that's a demanding job, I had a lot more time than when I was in private practice, and I started showing up to city council meetings in Culver City because I thought, we've got all these great things going for us. We should be having more affordable housing. We should be having more bike lanes. We should have better public transit. I'm sure that they're working on all that, right? And I went there to city council, and we were not working on any of that. So
Very typical.
Started to get involved just because I'd been reading about like all these best practices for cities for years, and it seemed like that hadn't caught on in City Hall. And I quickly realized how easy it is to really get involved at the highest level, and how important these issues are, like how much local government affects policies that relate to climate change, homelessness, affordability, the existence of a middle class in California, safety for children getting to school, all of these things, and just a healthy city. All these things were so important, and the ability to be involved is just right there, So I helped out a couple campaigns, including Megan Sally Wells and Thomas Small, and worked on a ballot measure, and all of that was very successful. And I thought, well, shoot, I should run, and I did. And in April 2018, was elected to the city council, and coming up on the end of my first term.
Wow, incredible. So I know that Culver City, tell us a little bit about where Culver City is. I know that some of my my community, my followers on social media might not be from this area. This might be the first time that they're hearing about Culver City. I mean, I'm very familiar because I'm right next door. But tell us a little bit about your community, Culver City, what they're about, and what city council members have to offer to the community of Culver City.
You bet. And let me know if the lag on the audio is a problem, because we might be on different streams. If it's an issue,
okay. I hear it fine. If anybody else hear anything weird, please let us know in the comments.
Perfect. You sound perfect to me too. So, okay. It's all about the audience though, right? Just like it's all about the voter. Culver City it was formed in 1917, I think, by Harry Culver, who was one of the original subdividing developers in the country, and actually was super influential in setting up the National Realtors Board. I forget what it was called, but he established it to halfway between Los Angeles and Venice, at a fork in the train tracks, just knowing that that was going to be a spot for development. Um, and it was originally formed as a sundown town. It was meant to be a whites only city. All of
Mm.
the covenants the in the subdivision, there were provisions in everybody's deed that said, "I promise not to sell this land to," and then just fill out the list of quote undesirable people, which would include me.
Wow.
Today, I would not have been able to buy in that Culver City. Um, but so today it sits sort of on the southeast end of what's considered the west side. To our
Mhm.
west or to our east is West Adams. To our north is Palms and basically Palms. To our south is Inglewood and LA County, unincorporated LA County, and to our west is Mar Vista, um, Playa Vista, Del Rey, and Marina Del Rey. So it's sort of like a gerrymandered city. The story is that Harry Culver was trying to annex land to get to the ocean, and he never quite made it. He made it to Lincoln Boulevard, where our Costco sits today. Um, but we're sort of on the southeast end of the west side is the bottom line.
And what is the makeup of the community in Culver City? What are the demographics, or is it like a younger city, or in terms of the people that live there? Or what are the demographics, if you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the story and the feeling is a little different from what the actual statistics say.
Mhm.
In some ways, it's a very diverse city, but it's far less diverse than LA County. It skews whiter. It skews much more affluent. The median home price, it was 1.3 million 2 years ago, and it's probably more like 1.6 million or 1.7 million now, or even more. So it is when I was buying here, the judge that I clerked for kind of made fun of me and called it Cheapwood. I said, "What do you mean Cheapwood?" He said, "Well, it's not Westwood, it's not Beverlywood, it's Cheapwood." So, but it's not that way anymore. It's now very very
Yeah,
desirable.
desirable.
Yeah, so that sort of sums it up. It's always been a little bit exclusive. It was a little rough for a number of years. Now it's back to being very very expensive and exclusive.
Wow, incredible, incredible to know. So, okay, so there's a lot going on, and one of the things that I learned about you when I was preparing to this conversation is that you're very committed to environmental and climate action and environmental work. And one of the things that you were, an instrumental uh, decision maker was in, getting neighborhood oil drilling kind of in check in your area. Specifically, if you ever drive, for folks that live here in Los Angeles, if you ever drive through La Cienega towards, south to the airport, you see a lot of still oil drilling almost happening as you drive by. So would you tell us a little bit about what's your platform? What are some of the things that you want to focus on? And how are you thinking about those, in terms that you are a city in the middle of a bigger city, and adjacent to two smaller cities, like West Hollywood and Beverly Hills, and then you're all surrounded by Los Angeles County. So, what are some of the priorities that you have in terms of your platform?
Yeah, and in my mind, this it's kind of one coherent whole. Like and that the bleed over of all these things kind of spills over in the way I present my platform. But in my mind, it all is very, very interconnected, and it's a whole set of solutions that have been politically difficult for 50 years and are now really necessary. And it's
Mhm.
essentially that begins with housing and homelessness,
Mhm.
because you cannot address homelessness without addressing the housing shortage. I'm a big supporter of subsidized housing, affordable housing, all of these great things like social housing. But I also support just regular old development, and not I think we need to sort of expand the ideas of what types of development in the private sector we allow. Because at the moment, you can either you can make a McMansion, right? You can knock over an old LA ranch house and build a 3,000 square foot house that will sell for $3 or $4 million. That's one type of development. Those are developers. Um, and then on the other side, you can build the giant, 1,000 apartment towers, or the 5/1s that everyone says that they hate, right? we need all that, but we also need mid-sized apartment buildings. We need small lots. We need like lots and lots of different types of. We need duplexes. We need quads. We need bungalow courts. We need to find ways to bring back all these different types of living situations that were legal in Southern California and are iconic, like the bungalow court in Southern California before about 1970. And so, once you start to solve the housing market problem and moderate rents, then the excellent, amazing work that our countywide homeless services are doing, rehousing some 200 and some people a day, will start to make a difference, because they're currently rehousing about 200 people a day, give or take, and 220 are falling into homelessness. So you cannot solve homelessness until you deal with the housing problem. So that's sort of one thing. And homelessness, I do not believe that anyone is disposable. These are human beings that are on the streets, and I get into some trouble reminding people about dehumanizing language. But it's important. We are obligated to care for the least among us. That's a political value of mine. It's a moral value of mine. And something like LA's 4118, which doesn't do anything other than move people around and separate them from their medicines, their connections, their documents and stuff. That's just not a solution. So I believe in outreach. I believe in providing the yeses first before you start to talk about moving camps indoors. You have to have the solution. So I've got a track record here. We secured Project Home Key money and acquired 2 motels, and got help from our county partners and state partners with Sidney Kaumlager, Isaac Bryan, and Supervisor Holly Mitchell all came through to make this stuff happen. So we're going to have 74 new homes, half of which will be permanent supportive housing for the most traumatized people, and half will be transitional housing. So I've walked the walk already, but I'll carry that forward. We will continue to lead by example and show people what's politically possible, because to your point, we are a small little enclave. But I really believe that if I'm successful in being reelected, being a big loudmouth about housing and homelessness, that other people might feel emboldened to go ahead and make the moves that we all know are necessary to deal with this. The other thing the next sort of plank of the platform is public safety, public space, and public health, which again, in my mind, are sort of all interconnected, because
all interrelated. Yeah.
Yeah, because if a young black man doesn't feel comfortable in a beautiful public space that we create, right? Like we make a wonderful, let's say we invest in the sidewalk, we widen it, we calm down the cars so that it's safe, kids can walk to school. If a young black man can't safely walk there because of policing issues, we have not created public space for everyone. We haven't created public safety for everyone. And so all of that is inclusive. You think about gun violence. The only type of approaches that work on gun violence are public health approaches. The only things that work on traffic violence are public health approaches. And so all of this comes together. How do you deal with our streets and public space so that people feel welcome and can take care of each other? It really requires a holistic view of making sure that everybo's safe. And I think here I got a track record too. Because we have a police department that is serious about trying to get better. And I know this is a fraught topic, and I know whatever I say is not going to make anybody happy, but I'm trying. But we did, to the credit of our police chief, we ended vehicular stop and frisk. This city had interpreted proactive policing as, any pretext to pull over someone who was giving off a bad vibe would turn into a stop. Tail lights out, tinted windows. If you looked wrong, you got pulled over. There's much less of that now, and by intention. So that's that I think is a success for that is removing law enforcement interactions that were unnecessary and weren't making anybody safer, were potentially making putting people in more danger. And then we've also invested a lot in street trees, in improving the downtown area. During COVID, we opened up outdoor dining everywhere. That's sort of all part of the same thing in my mind. And then finally, it's in the environment and transportation. And that is probably the hardest to explain to people. But if you know about California's efforts in climate change, it makes perfect sense, because half of California's greenhouse gas emissions come from the transportation sector, and the overwhelming majority of those emissions are coming out of the tailpipes of our private automobiles. And we know from the Air Resources Board, one of the best regulators in the world, that merely converting to electric cars is not going to get the greenhouse gas emission
Yeah.
reductions that we need. And so it also is the source of a ton of air pollution, far more than the Inglewood oil field coming from the freeways and from our 4-lane, 6-lane streets that go through neighborhoods where we saw, for example, that horrible car crash in CD10. Cars should not be able to go 100 miles an hour in our neighborhoods. It also, giving people safe options by bus or by bike or walking, creates a better local environment and helps us get to our goal of reducing vehicle miles traveled. And it just makes a nicer city. I mean, the transportation system that I inherited as a council member did not work. I mean, Friday at 5:30 p.m. anywhere was, sitting around and spewing exhaust everywhere without any safe options. So long-winded, but it's all sort of a big package in my mind. And I think I've got a track record to prove that we've made progress and made the city better. And it can, we can only do more.
Absolutely. And I see some folks, reacting to your platform and in a positive way. I also
Good.
see all these yes. I also see all these issues being interconnected, interrelated with climate, especially. And I love that contrast that you made about are we really doing a service to the community when we have beautiful open space, but people don't feel, certain communities, especially Black and Brown communities, don't feel comfortable participating and experience it and utilizing these spaces. So what are we doing really if we're not creating the right space? So I appreciate you thinking about that, and it's great for me to learn to learn that from you, that is possible to think about both things, and open space and environmental justice, and also public safety and social justice. So that's amazing. Well, I mean, we're earlier we were talking about, before what when we were getting, troubleshooting and getting ready for the live stream, we were talking a little bit about polarizing and how polarizing politics is. And I want to invite folks that are watching this live stream to ask questions in the chat, and for Alex and for this conversation, and to let us know what you think. But one of the things that I noticed, and I have experienced that, and it's very hard for me personally, is seeing so many inflammatory. There is no real discourse. Even when we're not agreeing, there is not a middle ground to say, well, I don't agree with you, but I'm still going to treat you with respect. And in being a public servant, and you that have been already a city council member, and I think at some point you guys have that, you rotate mayors, so you become a mayor at some point. And but I want to talk about how disruptive this new wave of activism or civic engagement is, not only for, not only for us personally as public servants, but also as a disservice to the larger community. And I want to just note, I want to note that I'm an activist, and I have been an organizer since I was a child, and I have organized marches. I have organized marches in Washington, D.C., against Trump and such. But I just never seen, since maybe a little before the pandemic or during the pandemic, I have never seen so much inflammatory rhetoric for what anything you say. It got to the point that you just can't say anything. You can't make anyone happy without having like a huge backlash. So how have you been dealing with that? And what is your perception and your thoughts around this kind of behavior that we see in the community?
I should start by, thanks for that question. I should start by saying that I'm referring in this answer to Culver City, and I'm not, I'm, Los Angeles has such a different political dynamic where people who would likely support me and be pushing me, to the left in a polite way, have really, really important grievances and have had really important grievances with LA City Council. And I don't express a view on how they've
Right.
communicated that, because when you're talking about something like 4118, where it's purely punitive, and it's not coming from us. It doesn't come from a place of solving the problem. It comes from a place of reacting and pushing
Right.
people.
And pushing it away. Hmm.
Yeah, I can understand the strong reactions there. So I'm not, my answers about Culver City, where the
Hmm.
backlash has been, more opposed to change, and sort of desiring the status quo. And, that's what I think a lot of, maybe it's a word of warning for incoming people who I think are likely to win in LA City Council, that, people will, there's always a honeymoon period, but the nationwide politics is quite vitriolic right now. There was a report by the National League of Cities about threats to elected officials and city staff nationwide, and it's absolutely on the uptick everywhere. I've experienced that 100%. It worries my family. It almost is almost a factor in not running again, and I really don't know how we're going to recruit women and candidates who are Black, Latinx, or any sort of marginalized identity. It makes it much harder because it is nasty. And with social media and not a whole lot of local journalism, things take root, like stories take root that are just misinformation. And so it's really hurt civic discourse, in Culver City, at least, because people are arguing about things that just are not, they're not reality.
Right.
And then sometimes people say, well, why didn't you correct it? And it's like, I have a full-time job.
Yeah.
I have an actual full-time job that is not city council. I don't have time to go on to deal with Facebook at all, period.
Right.
So it's unfortunate. I think that there's what I try to do very hard. What I really try to do is just let it wash over and listen for the kernel of something real that's in someone's vitriolic communication, because they're feeling something, right? And that's important as an elected official. Even if the way the message is delivered is nasty, even if the person is misinformed, um, as long as they're not being affirmatively violent or threatening, I listen very closely, for that little bit that will make me a better city council member and make the city
Hmm.
better, because there's something in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. There is the behind the rhetoric, there is actually a big something that the community or the person wants to see. And sometimes it's just so much easier, especially when you're far removed in social media from seeing somebody face to face. It's a lot easier to come with negativity before you can actually come with, like, this is what I would like to see and how can I help do it, or how can you do it better. But yeah.
Oh, just one quick thing is that a lot of people who are activated because there's progressive leadership at local government, they've never experienced this before, and so being called activists to them is offensive. And it's
Right.
like, no, being an activist is one of the finest things in democracy. Like, don't your political ideology is also an agenda. It's also an ideology.
Yeah.
Simply because it was the status quo for 50 years doesn't mean that you lack ideology. You simply were in control and you're not used to it. You're not used to not being in control.
Right.
So that's been a process. That's a process that I think will play out more in throughout California as local politics becomes more real, instead of the usual very guarded, exclusionary status quo, low participation, low activity. Local government can't get away with that anymore. Like, the failures are too big. The system that we were moving through, working with for 50 years is done. It's all the juice is gone. So, there's going to be a lot more politics and local politics. And even if that makes people more activated, I think that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm having a question here on Instagram. Somebody's asking, let me see if I have any other questions over here. No. But somebody's asking, how do we make our streets safer faster? Culver City has been a great example over the past couple of years. Thank you. We need a lot more of these in more places, and we can't wait 50 years. So
We can, yeah,
this is the question.
we cannot wait 50 years. I don't even know if we can wait 5. What I would say is this: I actually have some hope here. There's some great organizations. I should start at the beginning here. Obviously, streets, equity is important in dealing with public space. You
Yeah.
have to start. You have to bake it in from the beginning. You cannot just kind of move forward. I think that is going to happen faster. That discussion and coming to coming to alliances, new understandings is going to happen much faster in the streets safety and mobility space than it has in the housing space. But I think the fights will be very similar. That said, it's everybody who cares about that issue should get together now, because whatever one thinks about the Olympics, they're coming, and it presents the most amazing mobility opportunity in my lifetime. Because when I first ran, I would talk to people about bus lanes and bike lanes and say, I don't know when we're going to get there, but bus lanes are obviously the answer, because we're not going to build $1 trillion of rail in the next,
Mhm.
even 50 years. But buses can link to that rail and create like the intersections and the network connections that are missing very quickly. Bus rapid transit and bike lanes could make this city one of the greatest places on earth really fast. And the Olympics present that opportunity because Metro wants to build out bus lanes. Like, the plans are there. If people can get together on the politics, decide what communities need, how to protect the neighborhoods that never get those investments and have the most dangerous streets, and really vigorously join forces saying, we're going to have a non-car mobility plan for the Olympics, which is already has to be the case. Just like the '84 games, we can't just have everyone drive everywhere. There's going to be like 1 million visitors or whatever. So
Right.
the Olympics are a chance to organize and build bus lanes that will totally, totally transform the region. And it will hit our greenhouse gas targets if we do this. We'll create safer streets. You'll be able to get across town in 30 minutes for $1.75. It's very possible.
Absolutely. I mean, I wanna, you know, it's disheartening to see so many cars, just one person driving them. Is the majority, like if not 95% or more of the traffic in Los Angeles is just people driving in, you know, their car by themselves. Today, I want to give a big shout out to Colombia. Today, they have a day with no cars and motorcycles. So everyone is required to take public transit. So there's no cars whatsoever or no motorcycles on the streets. And this morning, my family was, you know, I'm from Colombia, so my family was, you know, kind of talking about it and say like, oh, I'm biking to work right now, and you know, and it seemed to me at no point in our conversation they were like, I hope the president, you know, dies, or I hope that these people never get elected again. I mean, everyone kind of complied. And yes, people have their feelings and they were interviewing the news, and other people were like, this is the greatest thing. We have to protect our environment and we have to give our city a break from all of these emissions and from all of this, energy that cars, you know, emit. And it's so interesting for me to hear you talk about mobility, and to hear people always think that mobility, having a mobility plans, has to do with taking them off of their cars or taking away their cars. And that's something that we need to really do so much better regionally here in you know in our area in LA and in Southern California, let's just say.
I think that's 100% right. And the other thing is, I think, people need to sort of think about the framing a little differently. Like, sometimes people will apologize to me if they drive somewhere, and I'm like, I do not care if driving is the right choice for you. That's the right choice. It's fine. It's the system. You should have the choice. That's all. I'm not trying to get anybody out of their car. I'm just trying to get people options, because it's pretty miserable to ride a bicycle on South La Brea.
It's
Which,
scary.
it's scary. This is where Google Maps sent me the other day, and I was like, no, I know better.
I know. I also bike. I also have a bicycle, I have an electric bike, and I only drive right now a scooter, a moped. I have a Vespa, so that's how I transport. So like today, I was going to the post office to drop off some boxes, you know, to mail, and I strapped them, you know, in the scooter, and I, like, you know, and I got. But then I thought, wow, here I am in my moped, you know, and it could be three more of us occupying the space of one car, you know, if that was the culture, which is much in the culture again of like Colombia is much, in a lot of developing countries, motorcycles is what you do because it's cheaper. It gets you places faster, and if you are a renter or something like that, you can just park it anywhere. Like it's not, you know, it's not a big deal. But we haven't gone there. We haven't got to that place, and I still hear in community meetings when you talk about bike lanes, bicycle lanes, like, you know, protected bike lanes and mobility justice, I still hear almost death threats to to other people.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Culver City is, we're benefiting from a lot of human infrastructure that's been built up. It's,
Uh,
with some of the things we've done, it's only possible because a lot of people have learned a lot of information about mobility justice over the last really 10 years. And just watching that is, we did this Move Culver City project, which is a bus lane, mobility lane, bike lane, electric circulator. And really, it's going to link up with more if the Olympic plan actually goes through and create that like networked option of just a fast bus. Um, but I knew there'd be backlash, obviously, right? You're reallocating space away from people who have dominated the roads forever, um, and are used to the status quo. But I knew very early on that this time was a little different because the ratio of positive comments and people sort of volunteering to be ambassadors for the change was off the charts compared to
yeah,
the Great Streets project in Los Angeles. It was really encouraging, and I think part of some of that also is just unfortunate, but silver lining of the pandemic. So many people did buy those electric bikes or a cargo bike for their kids. I go to school drop-offs, and it's a lot different than it was just 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, there's a lot of other parents on cargo bikes there. So there's a
right.
change, and
Yeah,
we we owe it to those families who are trying to change the whole culture, who are trying to live lighter with a lighter footprint and save $10,000 a year on car ownership per car. We owe it to them to give them safe options to get to school and to their daily needs.
yeah, absolutely. And like I see this coming from Kurt, saying that this morning he was doing canvassing, and the 70 house 50, so out of 75 houses, 50 houses had more than three vehicles in their driveway. Because if you have three adults, the idea is that if you don't have a robust public transit system, you need three cars, because if you go to school at what time and if you go to work in this other time, I think also we'll miss a huge opportunity after the pandemic to make work from home a much more real and formal and professional way for one to work. I feel like we missed the mark a little bit there, and it seems like everybody's coming back to like in person and in the office and all that, and that also creates such a crazy congestion.
Yeah, the other thing that jumps out there with the work from home, I was just at a SCAG meeting recently, Southern California Association of Governments, dealing with the next generation of infrastructure and the regional plan for mobility. And really counterintuitively, that a lot of households that are more work from home, their vehicle miles traveled actually went up because we're still trying to figure out why. We heard from people at the UCLA Institute for Transportation Studies and a professor from UC Davis, and it's really interesting. So we have a lot to learn about the change. What has changed permanently post pandemic. And the other thing that jumps out about three vehicles in the driveway is how much of that might be household overcrowding too, when you've got multiple households living under one roof.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, just to light things up a little bit. What are some of the things that you love most about campaigning? Campaigning is really hard. Like I can tell you, campaigning. I
You
lost
know
a lot of
it.
weight.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, grassroots campaigning is even harder, right? Because it's really hard to you can't crack the whip because everyone's volunteering their time and their talents and
And there's so
donating
many
money.
ideas. I remember in my campaign, everybody had so many, and they were all great ideas of like how are we going to make all these ideas possible. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, and especially it's really at least in my case, the people who I've who've been attracted to my campaign are so talented and so
Yes.
amazing that it's like trying to put on We Are the World. You've got all this talent, like how do you get everybody to shine? And it's fun. It's also very difficult. But the thing I think I love most about campaigning is just getting out from behind the social media fire hose of bilge water of grossness and talking to people because the community is awesome.
Yeah.
It's nothing like what you'd see on Nextdoor. People are amazing, and even if they don't like a certain thing that's happened, 9 out of 10 people, or at least 85 out of 100, probably more of like 95 out of 100, at the end of a discussion about something like housing or mobility or public safety, they will nod their heads and say, I get it. When
Yeah.
you actually talk to people and you strip away all the untruths, um, and connect on a human level and really, exchange thoughts and perspectives, um, it's amazing how much support there is for things to be way, way better. And that makes me so happy. Like, win or lose, I did a lot of good over the last 4 years and changed the way that people think about what local government can do. And I think that's just like something I'll have forever. And it makes me very happy to get back out there and see that.
Yeah, I also love being with people and knocking on doors and all that. Like canvassing is like my bread and butter. Like I love it. And I learned so much about what's happening in the community and people and just in general, trying to understand what their priorities are, just, going door to door. So I can relate to, the
Yeah.
feeling of let's get out of the house and let's go out there and meet folks. But running for office is also extremely difficult, and requires so much of your own self to putting yourself out there. So what are some of the, maybe if you could share an anecdote or something that you dislike the most about running, being a candidate and running for office?
I think, it's great that people share their innermost thoughts with you when you go to their door, and sometimes you hear some things you really wish you didn't know about people, especially views on the homeless. I mean, I've gotten into some trouble for speaking very frankly about what I consider to be dehumanizing language and policy proposals because of my family's own experience with anti-Semitism, both in Europe
Mm,
where we left, and where my dad's side of the family left, and here in Los Angeles. In the 1930s, anti-Semitism was very alive here, and it's documented, directed at my family.
mm,
Um, and to hear people talk about, eliminationist language, dehumanizing language about homeless people, it's that is my least favorite, because it was one thing to hear it at doors, um, and to be shocked that people would say some of the things that they'll say. It's another to hear people speaking in the language that sort of gives license to people who would go to very dark places, and to see people believe that it's politically acceptable, socially acceptable to say, get rid of them, push them out in the desert, that sort of thing, which I hear at city council meetings, not as bad as I've heard at doors, but there is a rising um, hatred for the unhoused that we have to start making progress, and we have to rehumanize these folks in the public's eyes.
yeah, I agree. There are some, or climate deniers, or there's so many people misinformed that we could that could do that could help so much more the cause, but all this
Yeah.
disinformation is problematic.
Especially the climate on the local level, because people, I think there's a broad consensus among Democrats, at least. Yes, the climate is changing very fast. It's caused by human activity. There's still time to make it, less bad. I think everyone agrees when they talk about national and state policies, electrification, that sort of thing. When you start to talk about what needs to be done at the local level, reducing those vehicle miles, more density near jobs and transit and all that stuff, building electrification, getting rid of fossil gas in new construction. Um, that is where people all of a sudden become climate deniers again. It doesn't matter that you show them UN reports. It doesn't matter that you show them, a letter to your city from someone who worked on the IPCC report. They don't want to believe that the types of changes that we know from the best scientists in the world, the best regulators in the world, with the things we know need to be done at the local level, it's very hard for them to accept. And that one doesn't bother me as much, because it's more just playing the long game, being understanding that people take time to come to new ideas, and that some never will, but that, working at the margins, eventually people will come around. That one is a little more. I think I'm very much more hopeful and optimistic. I feel like I've already sort of turned the corner with a lot of people who now understand some of the local issues as they relate to climate.
Amazing. Very well said, as some people said it here on social media. So, okay, I think this is coming to an end, but for folks that are watching right now or sending this video after to somebody that they know in Culver City, when are elections, how do people vote, how can they support you? Are there any like volunteer opportunities? How can people donate? Campaigns don't just appear, guys. We need to support good folks running for office with our money too. So whatever you can, how can people get in touch with you and support your campaign?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. That's always a candidate's favorite question. I have a website, alexfisch, fisch.com. There's a donate button there. Anything is welcome. Some of those small donations warm my heart the most when I see people's jobs and they give, they don't have enough and they give a little bit to me. It's like, I feel, I mean, I well up, I owe those people so much, so alexfish.com. There's also the opportunity to sign up to volunteer, take a yard sign. We're canvassing. We'll be phone banking. We'll be text banking. All that stuff. So if you sign up, we'll know. We'll know we can tap you for that. I'll quote Jackie Goldberg, great Jackie Goldberg. I don't need the most money, but I need enough. So
Yeah.
it's what I need. I've got, one of the candidates has over $100,000, which I don't think has ever been raised in a Culver City election before.
Wow.
There's an independent expenditure pack, which has already kind of gone negative against me, that has $175,000, unprecedented amounts of money. I don't think it's going to stop me, but any support you've got will help me get the word out and let people know that I'm not the evil person that that some have painted me to be over the last 4 years.
Right. And I think it's important to to recognize that even though you have been you're seeking for reelection, you have been a progressive voice to Culver City. And just because you have been down this road before doesn't mean that you're not a grassroots candidate. This is like what
Absolutely.
becomes interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm establishment, but I'm still the outsider. It's kind of funny. Like, I know my way around City Hall, and I'm extremely effective, which is part of why some people really dislike me. But I'm still like, I don't take developer money. I'm endorsed by the carpenters. I don't take, I didn't seek endorsement from the police
Hmm.
union, but I've got a lot of labor. And I think
Beautiful.
that sort of speaks for itself. So yeah, I mean, any support is very welcome. We have a fundraiser coming up that's going to be super fun tomorrow. You can just shoot an email to the campaign if you can't find it. But $75 for an open bar, heavy appetizers at the Shea Hotel, the newest one in Culver City. It should be pretty fun.
Very
That's coming up.
fun. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And if any of you watching this video want to learn more, the information is here in the chat, and you can also see it here. And I will post this video later on Instagram. And on if you have friends in Culver City, if you know people, I actually earlier said if you go, if you play, if you love, if you go eat there. If you just like Culver City, make sure that you share this information. You just never know who's watching out there, and that we can get this message to more people, so that we can get good people elected to this important position. And also understanding that this is in so much relation to Los Angeles, right? Like for example, the rail that was coming to from downtown to the west side, it wouldn't have not been possible without the support of Culver City, and a lot more that we're planning to do regionally when it comes to our own house and more. So thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here. Yeah.
One last little plug.
Yeah.
Every election is the most important election, right? But it really, really is in Culver City. Rent control, and tenant protections, which we instituted 3 years ago, are they're on the line. It depends on having a council that continues to support them. Finishing the job of closing down the Inglewood oil field in Culver City, which thankfully the county has followed our lead. That depends
Yes.
on electing strong progressive leadership in this election. So, it really is important. Maintaining this progress on mobility. People will rip out that bus and bike lane, regardless of the Olympics, to get the votes. And so, we need people who have a vision of a Los Angeles that's fairer, cleaner, safer for everybody.
Absolutely. So here is Alex Fisch running candidate for Culver City City Council. On the side of progress, you also please make sure that you help us get to more voters by sharing this video around with people that you know in Culver City, and with just anyone. You just never know who knows another person and can get, this message across. And we have posted his information, alexfisch.com, if you want to volunteer. If you're that kind of person that is like, you know what, I don't believe in the money and politics, we need you coming knocking on doors and calling folks and texting folks, and if your skill is something else, I'm sure Alex can find a place for you. So come in and support. And if you're like, you know what, I don't have time for that, I don't like talking to people, I'm just not there, but I'm able to donate $30, $50, $100, we need you and we need your support. And politics is always local, and to change everything, we need everyone. So thank you so much, Alex, for being with us today.
Thank you, Aura. It's great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too. And hopefully I will see you around in the, in the more like active part of campaigning. And hopefully I'll see you when you become again, when you get reelected.
It's the victory party.
Yes, absolutely. All right, everyone. So that was Alex Fisch. I hope that you guys enjoy our conversation today. And next week, I'm coming with more. I'll have a few surprises. I think we're going to have somebody else from West Hollywood and a school board, which is a lot of elected officials that we have not been able to talk to are also running for the school board. So that's very interesting. And I hope that you guys have an amazing Thursday, and rest of your week. If you have not registered to vote, we need you to do that right now. And if you have a friend and you're not sure, make sure that he or she or they is registered to vote, and ask them. And please, this is the right moment to put pressure to your folks. Get them registered. Now in the state of California, you get your ballot in the mail, so you can do it from the comfort of your home. You don't have to go anywhere, which is like no excuses, folks. We got to show our civic participation and vote for great people. Thank you so much for being with me this afternoon, and I talk to everyone very soon. Bye bye.